Hi, so today's video is actually going to be an introduction to what is freight brokerage business. I'm going to go ahead and explain to you what exactly is a freight brokerage business, what freight brokers do, why are freight brokers needed. I'm going to go ahead and give you pretty much a very detailed introduction onto what exactly is the freight brokerage business. Now, one of the things I want to go ahead and speak about is what is basically a freight broker, what does a freight broker do, why are freight brokers needed? Now, for those of you who don't know anything about freight brokerage, brokers are pretty much individuals or businesses that are basically looking for freight for dispatchers to call them so carriers can haul. So they're a big unit to the transportation circle. So I'll give you an example. Freight brokers are basically the people who are on the load boards posting loads that they have available that shippers are giving to them. Now they are waiting for dispatchers or carriers to contact them so they can get their loads booked. Now the reason why freight brokerage is so big and so common and why it's a necessity in the transportation business is because without freight brokers, there won't be any shipment. Why? Now, the reason for that is because every individual in the transportation career has their own assignment to do. So I'll give you an example. The shipper themselves, they provide the manufacturer. They provide the freight that needs to be hauled. The broker is in charge of getting the freight out into the market for carriers and dispatchers to contact them so this freight is able to move. Now, what happens if we go ahead and eliminate freight brokerage? No one is putting the freight out on the market. So what happens next is you're pretty much eliminating what it's called a piece to the project. And if you eliminate the piece of the project, then it won't work. Now, I've always been a true believer and have always insisted that everyone in the transportation business needs each other. Freight brokers need shippers, shippers need freight brokers, dispatchers need carriers, carriers need freight brokers, vice versa. Everyone needs each other. Now, the reason for that is because if there is no type of circle or, any type of united in that circle, then transportation really won't work because everyone has to do their whole job role to make sure that transportation keeps on going and keeps moving forward. Now, freight brokerage business, it's a very good business to get into. It's a very well constructed business, and it's in one of the best business methods in the world, which is transportation. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you a brief summary of what a freight dispatcher agent would have to do. What is a freight dispatcher? What do they do? So as I was explaining earlier, a freight broker is basically a individual or a company that's in charge of finding freight, right? So contacting shippers, manufacturers to give them freight for them to put out in the market. They get paid a certain revenue for them to grab this freight and put it out in the market for dispatchers or carriers to contact them so this freight is able to move. The role of a freight broker is basically just to get things from a manufacturer, right, from a shipper, picked up by a carrier, and for the carrier to transport it over to the receiver wherever it's going, whether if it's going from a warehouse to warehouse or from the manufacturer to a work site, etc. Basically, the job of a freight brokerage company is to help manufacturers, shippers get their freight moved out of their warehouses, out of their yards, or from wherever this freight is necessarily moving from to its destination. So you're pretty much a middle individual, we can say, in the business process of this method. So the role of freight brokerage is basically to grab freight, put it out in the market for carriers and dispatchers to contact you, get it picked up, and get that freight moved over to the receiver, to the person who bought it, to the person who needs it, etc. That is basically the role of a freight broker. It's pretty much just being able to get freight onto the market, get it picked up from the manufacturer, and get it all the way down over to the receiver. Now, you do get paid for that. you get paid off the revenue. So I'll give you an example. Let's say a shipper is giving you $3,000 for this freight movement. Now you have to find a way to get this freight out in the market for you to generate some income from this freight, from the rate of the freight, and be able to make sure that the carrier gets paid as well. So how does that happen? So basically the way that happens is you have to get a revenue that makes sense. How does a revenue make sense? You have to make sure that whatever percentage you're getting, right? So let's say this shipper gives you $3,000, right, to move this freight. And it's going from, let's say, from Miami, Florida to Baltimore, to Maryland. And they're giving you $3,000. Out of those $3,000, you have to pay yourself and you have to pay the carrier itself too to generate their rate. Now, how do we do that? The way we do that is we want to go ahead and calculate the miles with the revenue that you're getting for this rate. So let's say you want to go ahead and from $3,000 you want to put this load out for $2,500. And let's say you get paid off the revenue. So let's say you're a freight broker business owner, you're going to generate $500 from this specific rate, because if it was $3,000 and you have it up for $2,500 and you find a carrier that takes it for $2,500, then you are making basically $500 off of that revenue. Now, if let's say for an example you are a freight broker agent and you get the load for $3,000 and you have it for $2,500, and let's say you get paid 30% of the remaining of the revenue, so $500, then you would get paid 30% from what's remaining. So you'll get paid you'll get paid 30% from $500. So that's the way it works. So your job is basically to get freight, get a rate for the freight, make sure that you're able to pay yourself as a business owner or as a freight agent, a freight brokerage agent, make sure that you're able to get enough money as well to be able to pay the carrier. So you're basically in charge of paying yourself, getting that revenue for your business, and you have to make sure that the rate is fair for the carrier as well, because if it's not, then they don't want to take the freight. So that means you get no business and you have freight that's just sitting there and isn't moving. So it's very important to understand the role of a freight broker, right? Or role of a freight brokerage company. You need to understand that you are just a middle individual who is grabbing freight from a manufacturer, shipper, or yard and getting it moved, picked up by a carrier and moving it to a receiver. Now, the next thing I want to go ahead and speak about is probably the number one question that everyone has when they enter anything with freight brokerage, right? What is the income potential? The income potential as far as freight brokerage and becoming a business owner is very high. Now, the reason why I'm going to go ahead and explain why it's very high is because in the transportation industry, there is a lot of movement that happens when it comes down to compensation. For the most part, especially in peak seasons of the transportation industry, manufacturers are paying thousands of dollars to get freight moved week in and week out. Now, how exactly does that generate income for you? So as I was explaining earlier, you as a freight brokerage company, you are pretty much making money off of the revenue. So you are basically charging these individuals your service fee to get these loads basically onto a market, so you can have carriers contact you, so carriers can pick up this freight and take it to the receiver. Now, how exactly does the money generate? What's the income potential? How can you make thousands of dollars a year? So as I was explaining, let's say you have a load, right? And that manufacturer is telling you, okay, I got four loads, right? They're the same loads. I'm paying $3,000 a piece. Get them out in the market. You have to remember that off of $3,000, you're basically in charge on how you want to put that freight out in the market. So if you have $3,000, you study the market and you see that there's similar lanes, right? And what similar lanes are basically are pretty much, let's say you see, this one's going to Miami, Florida to Baltimore. Let's say you see one going from Miami, Florida, maybe 2 hours away from Baltimore. It's kind of similar, and you see that the rate is paying 20, let's say 2,200, right? So what happens next is you have a $3,000 rate. You get this out for, let's say, $2,200. As the business owner, the revenue that you're seeing off of this is an $800 difference. So what happens there is you keep the $800 difference, right? Now, if you're a freight broker agent and you're working off of percentage, and let's say you're going to pay 35 to 40%, then you are seeing that you're going to get 30% of $800, which is a good sum of amount of money as well. So you need to understand that you're almost in charge of what this freight is moving for. You're almost in charge of what is coming towards your pocket. So the income potential is very high out there. It has a very high standard. And in the transportation business, you must understand that freight is being moved week in and week out, whether the seasons are good, whether the seasons are bad, peak seasons, or when the season is completely slow. Regardless of everything, freight still needs to be moved. So the income potential is very high. It really comes down to your negotiation skills. It really comes down to who you are as a business individual to be able to generate income. The income potential is there. You as a business individual, you basically have to have what is called the business plan and know what exactly you're doing and what you're talking about to be able to generate the income. So regardless, the income is there. Manufacturers have to pay for these for this freight to be moved. At the end of the day, you have to think about it. Warehouses are full of freight, right? Week in and week out, they're moving freight in and out. So what happens? They can't have freight necessarily sit there for months because they need that space that freight is covering to bring in new freight. Why? Because if that freight isn't moving, that basically means that manufacturer isn't making any compensation for that freight sitting at a warehouse. So what needs to happen is someone needs to move that freight so they can get it over to the receiver so they can get paid, so then that way they can keep on expanding their business, correct? So at the end of the day, no matter what, these businesses, these manufacturers have to get this freight out of their warehouses, out of their yards, etc. So at the end of the day, for any of you who know anything about the transportation industry, freight is moved by thousands of dollars. Obviously, there's shorter, rates and shorter trips where you're moving things for hundreds, $600-700, going 120, 300 miles, and that's common. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. You can still make plenty of money by receiving shorter movements of freight. That's no problem. It really comes down to you, like I said, as a business individual, to know what exactly you're moving, to know that you have to move things at the right price, and to understand the market of transportation. Because if let's say you're moving things and you're not making enough money, let's say, I'll give you an example. Let's say you have a load, right? You have freight that's moving from one city to another city, and you're moving it for $4,000, and then there's other individuals out there moving it for $6,000, then what happens there? It becomes a problem to your pockets, because that means that you, as a freight brokerage company, you're charging a lot less than other individuals out there that are making the profit of $2,000 more than what you are, because you're charging $3,000 and they're charging about, let's say, $5,000 or $6,000. They're making a profit of $2,000 to $3,000 more than what you're making. So it's very important to understand the business side of freight brokerage. You need to understand how to calculate for you to make a fair amount of money. And you also have to understand that at the end of the day, you are basically almost in charge of getting this carrier paid. And carriers want to be paid. They want to be compensated equally. So no one wants to work for the bare minimum. So you have to understand that when you receive a rate, you have to make sure that you are making sure that these carriers are being paid a certain amount of compensation for them to be interested in your load. So I'll give you an example. If you have a load that's basically paying $1,200, right? And let's say that $1,200, let's say this is like a 500-mile run. You're basically paying them like $150, $160 a mile. because the way you get down to that is you have to divide the rate, right? So $1,200 divided by the miles, that's how you come up with the rate per mile. Now, if you're paying carriers under from what they want to earn or from what they think this rate should pay, then they have no intention, they have no interest in your service to be able to get these loads from you because you're not paying them correctly. Now, that's why I say it's very important to be able to negotiate loads, to be able to negotiate with the manufacturer. If you know that out in the market, this same specific load or something similar is being moved for let's say for $4,000 and they're giving it to you for $3,000, try to bump your negotiation to get that rate up to maybe $3,500 because the market out there has it for $4,000. So what does that necessarily mean? The less money that you have from a manufacturer given to you, that's what you got to work with. So the more money you have, the easier it is for you to generate the rate for the carrier and for yourself. So that way everyone feels compensated. Everyone feels like they're getting paid for their job, and the manufacturer is pretty basically giving you the benefit of the doubt of giving you that extra money for you to get this freight moved from their warehouse or from wherever they have this freight to their receiver. So it is extremely important that you understand the negotiation of freight brokerage. You need to understand the role of a freight broker. So as I was explaining, you need to learn negotiation. You need to understand how to study your competition out there, how to study those lanes, how to kind of come up with a fair number that's going to fit into that specific lane. You know, is this enough? Is this enough money to cover this many miles? Is this enough money to cover my service as a freight brokerage company and to cover the carrier as well? So you need to understand that off of the revenue that the shipper and the manufacturer gives you, you have to basically pay yourself and you have to find a way to pay the carrier. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to pay them out of pocket. It just necessarily means that out of that rate, you have to find a comfort zone for you to make money as a freight brokerage business and for the carrier to haul this freight. So I'm going to go ahead and explain it one more time to you. So let's say you get a rate, it's $3,000. Let's say you get this freight out on the market on the load board for let's say $2,300. The revenue between $3,000 and $23,000 is how much? $700. Now, if you're a freight brokerage business owner, then that's what you have in that revenue, and you're gonna get that $700 difference, correct? You're making sure you're getting paid, you're making sure the carrier is getting paid fairly, and if you're a freight broker agent and let's say you get the load for $3,000 and you have it up for $2,300, then and you're getting paid 30 to 40%, whatever it is, whatever the agreement it is that you have with this freight brokerage company, then you'll make 30% of $700 of what's left off of the revenue. So you need to understand that you're almost in charge of your own destiny when it comes down to what you get paid as a freight brokerage, and you have to make sure that it's fair for you, for the manufacturer, and for the carrier, which doesn't necessarily mean it's hard. The way I'm breaking it down, you know, some people could get confused and think, wow, so I got to make sure party one is happy, party two is happy, and party three is happy. No, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's complicated. That is why we have negotiation skills. This is why we have what is called study in transportation, and this is why it's so important to take a training in the freight brokerage business or anything that has to do in the transportation business. It's very important to get knowledgeable, to get information. You have to get very valuable information because you need to understand what you're doing when you're stepping into the transportation industry. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's complicated or that it's hard or that it's something that's, you know, that you need to be a brain scientist for. You know, none of that. But you need to understand that you need to know what you're stepping up to. So it's important to take your training. Now, we're going to go ahead and speak a little bit about the future of a freight brokerage business, what to expect. So let's say you start a freight brokerage business and you kind of want to know what happens next, right? I started my business. The business is starting to kind of grow. It's starting to go. What can I expect as a freight brokerage business? Now let me go ahead and make you guys understand something. Transportation has been around for years. It's going to be around for plenty of years, and it's a very well built up industry. So this is actually a very good industry to build a career, to build a business from when you're looking into the future. Now the reason for that is because when you want to go ahead and, let's say, pick out your pocket and invest into something, you want to make sure to invest into something that's long term, correct? It's almost like I'll give you an example, like purchasing a home. You want to make sure that you find the right home for you because you're going to be there for years. You're investing into your future. This is the same way. When you invest into a freight brokerage business, you have to understand that you're investing into your future. So there is a lot of potential. There's a lot of things, good things to expect from a freight brokerage business, because there's a lot of businesses out there that are basically, have started from something very small, and a couple of years later they become a big, industry, a big business method in the industry of transportation. So you need to understand that the future is very bright. If you have a right plan, and if you have a right business plan, and you have a strict schedule, and you understand what freight brokerage is and what freight brokerage really means to the industry, your future could be extremely bright. It all comes down to you as an individual, as a business owner, to understand what is out there for you, what the future holds for you. But you need to understand that this is the right business to get into. If you're looking into the future, you're investing into your own future as a freight brokerage business owner if you do things correctly, if you do things at the right time, if you know how to invest, if you know how to basically manage your money, how to manage your business. You keep on growing with the transportation industry. You understand what transportation is. You understand what freight brokerage is. You will have a very promising future. So it's very important to understand that freight brokerage has a lot to offer in the near future. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you won't see any success until 20 years from now. That's not what I'm trying to explain here. But I'm trying to explain to you that you will see a lot of very good things happen to you in the near future and in the further future that's out there. So you need to understand that this is a great business to get into, because this industry, as I always explain, isn't $1 million industry, but $1 billion industry. Just think about it. Take transportation out of this world for 1 month. We will be completely lost, because everything that we have, from the things that we consume to material-wise things that we have in our homes, or things that we use on our daily basis, were transported. Think about it. When you walk into a fridge and pour out milk, how does that get transported to the store that you went to get it? It was transported by a reefer, by a refrigerated trailer, right? So everything is transported. When you think of a cell phone that you hold in your hand to speak, that mobile device was transported in a dry van to a certain location from a manufacturer to the store where you went and purchased it. Everything is transported. So you need to understand that the future is bright when it comes down to freight brokerage, when it comes down to the transportation industry. There is a lot of potential good things that come with the transportation business, especially in the freight brokerage side. Because like I said, it's a huge necessity. Everyone in this transportation industry basically needs each other to keep transportation alive and to keep things moving. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys an example. So for most of you who know a little bit about transportation and have an idea about freight brokerage, you will understand who I'm speaking about. I'm going to go ahead and give you an example of Total Quality Logistics, TQL. They are a massive company. I believe nowadays they are ranked second as far as the best brokerage companies out there here in North America, right? And I'm going to go ahead and explain something to you. This was a business that started in 1997. Now, how long ago was 1997 from 2018? About 21 years. And we're speaking about a business that has a $2.9 billion revenue. $2.9 billion in 21 years. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain something to you. This brokerage company started the same way that anyone else has started. How is that? Everyone starts from scratch. Everyone starts brand new. Everyone runs into a brokerage business. If you have a startup business, you have to go from step one to your next milestone, correct? So what is the difference between you as a business owner and Total Quality Logistics? Nothing. The experience and the time, that's all about it. There is nothing different. That individual was someone who took the opportunity to become a business owner 21 years ago, had a business plan, had a business method, followed it through, learned the transportation industry, understood that freight brokerage is very well needed in the industry because, like I said, everyone needs each other in the transportation industry to keep transportation moving forward. So Total Quality Logistics was pretty much founded in 1997, 21 years ago. It started off as a company, just like any other company, startup company. You gotta build your company, you gotta build your name. And in 21 years, this company has become a startup company to something that's $1 billion company in the industry of transportation. Now, the reason why I'm using this as an example, there's a lot of individuals that give 20 to 40 years of their whole life to a certain company, and at the end of the day, what happens is you just retire, or you get to a certain point in life where you just can't work anymore, or you just don't want to work anymore. And what happens after that? There's nothing after that. There's no type of security. You don't own a business. You don't own anything. So what I'm trying to get to here is, as a freight brokerage business owner, you can build a business from scratch and grow with it and become very successful. There's a lot of brokerage businesses out there that start off, and in 10 years, they're $1 million industries, $1 billion industries. And they started the same specific way that you as a business owner has to start, from step number one until you reach your milestone and you keep going. Now, the importance of being able to build up as a business that you have to understand is being able to have a strict business plan, a business method, some type of, pattern way that you're going to build this business. So what I'm trying to explain to you guys is that in 21 years, this certain individual that started Total Quality Logistics became a business owner with the idea of maybe just becoming a small brokerage company, and ended up and now 21 years later, they're pretty much ranked second in North America to being the second best brokerage business in North America. And we're speaking about 21 years. As I said, I've know of people who devote 20 to 40 years of their life to a job and get nothing out of it at the end of it. They just worked. They have nothing for them. That's not their business. That has nothing to do with them. At the end of the day, they were just employees. So why not look into what freight brokerage is, right? And why not look into becoming a business owner and understanding that you're investing into yourself, and you're not only investing into yourself, but you're investing into a transportation business that is very well built. It isn't something that's completely new or an experiment. Transportation is something that's very well built. As I said, this is $1 billion industry, not $1 million industry. So it's very, very well off if you know what you're doing and you have a right business plan. Now, I want to go ahead and speak about a little bit about the pros and cons, right? So we can't always just speak about pros. We have to speak about the pros and cons, because everything has pros and cons. Every type of business method, everything has basically pros and cons. So, some of the cons that this business can have is starting up. You have to invest. Maybe as an example, you have to get what a surety bond is. You have to get a surety bond to have a business. A surety bond is basically, at this point, it's a $75,000 surety bond. It's pretty much like an insurance, a security for an example, to have under your business for you to be able to generate and open what a freight brokerage company is. Now, for the most part, it really isn't that expensive. It depends on who you go with. as far or of who's going to give you that bond. Now, for some individuals, that could be a con because at the end of the day, that's an investment that you have to kind of touch base on before you start generating what is called income, right? So some individuals don't like the idea of being able or having to pay for a bond, a surety bond, before making any type of compensation. So that could be a con. Now, the pro to that is that the moment you get your surety bond, you're basically getting to the steps of becoming a freight broker business owner. So what does that mean? You're investing into yourself. And you have to understand as an individual and as a future business owner that you have to invest into yourself to make money. Money makes money. So that's what I'm trying to kind of get to here. Some people need to understand that you have to invest to get your money's worth back. So it's kind of like you get what you pay for. I'm more than sure most of you have heard of this method. You get what you pay for. So if you're going to invest into yourself, into the transportation business, it's a great idea. Look forward into it. But as I said, this could be a con that some individuals don't like to take or don't like to acknowledge because you have to spend money to get this surety bond. So that could be a con in this industry. The other, pros and cons I want to go ahead and speak about is maybe finding a market for it, finding shippers. Maybe some people don't like to, communicate as much and don't like speaking to shippers, don't like speaking to manufacturers, and don't like really, maybe they're phone shy, maybe they're just they're not great negotiators. Now I'm going to go ahead and explain something to you. That could be a con to some individuals. Now the pro of that con is that you really necessarily only have to speak to these manufacturers and shippers a very few times. So I'm going to go ahead and explain a little bit to you on how you find shippers and how you get shippers. So when you find a manufacturer, a shipper that has freight that you know that they're moving things from their warehouse to a receiver, you have to contact them and ask, basically give them your service of a freight broker. Yes, my name is so-and-so. I'm calling on behalf of so-and-so, and I want to know if you need any freight brokerage assistance or service to be able to move freight from your manufacturer area, from your warehouse, to a receiver. Now, was that so hard? No, it wasn't. Now, what happens next is if they go ahead and they say, yeah, sure, go ahead and send me your company proposal, then you go ahead and send your company proposal over to them. If they like what you have available for them, if they like what your company, what your service is all about and what you're going to generate for them, then they're going to go ahead and put you onto their load list. So now, what happens here is you're basically going to go ahead and have that initial contact, get them to get you onto their load list, fill out the necessary paperwork to become, a freight brokerage service for them, and that's it. You don't have to speak to these individuals every single day. Your job is just to get them to take your service, to pay you, basically, to move their freight. You grab their freight, you put it on the market, you get carriers to basically haul this freight for you. You get paid, carriers get paid, everyone's happy. Now, as I explained, it isn't that big of a deal. Some people will see it as a con because they don't like speaking to individuals. They don't want to speak to anyone. But you have to understand that this is something very limited. This is something that you have to barely do. This is just to initiate what is called, closing down your deal to the business method of what freight brokerage is. So you need to understand that to build up the business, you have to have that initial contact. Some people don't like to do that, but you need to understand that there's a lot more pros in between that than cons, because your con is if you're people shy, if you're phone shy, well, you only got to speak to these people to the point where you close your deal. After that, you speak to them here and there because you have to find some things out about a load, and that's it. So now the pro about that is the moment you find the shipper, that means there's freight. The moment there's freight, that means you put it on the market. The moment that freight is on the market and carriers are contacting you to move that freight, that means you're getting paid. So where's the pro there? You're making what is called compensation for getting this freight moved. So you need to understand, like I explained, there's pros and cons to the business. There's things that you have to, like the surety bond, where you have to go ahead and basically, pay up front to get this all situated because it's a necessity in the transportation industry. You need to have what is called the surety bond. Sometimes and it becomes individual to a business owner. Some business owners for freight brokers, they want to have what contingency insurance is, because some manufacturers don't want to work with brokerage companies that don't have contingency insurance. That could be a con as well, but that doesn't necessarily mean that every manufacturer needs you to have contingency insurance to work with you. That's not the way this works. Some shippers, they want you to have contingency insurance. Even if you're not a carrier, they want you to have it because it's pretty much like like an insurance for their freight. For the most part, you don't have to worry about that, because I'd say in between, let's say out of 100% of shippers, maybe 90% of those, 10% of those shippers, would ask you for that contingency insurance, which isn't a big, it's not that big of a deal. Between 5 to 10% require that. So that could be a con to it. You might want to look into the contingency insurance, and it doesn't necessarily have to be something that you have to do from the start of your business. It could be an additional thing that you can add, to your business as you start growing and expanding. So, but you need to understand that there's a pro to it. When you have contingency insurance, for whatever reason that these shippers want you to have it, then you have it. So that means they have freight for you. So that means you're making money because they're relying on you having that. So they want to give you freight for you to do the service of getting this freight moved. So there's always a pro and cons to things. Everyone needs to understand that in any business method that you get into, there's going to be pros and cons. There's going to be things that you as a business owner are going to individually not like, and there's going to be things that you do like. But you need to understand that out of things that you don't like, you need to make sure it has a pro, right? So if you don't like doing something, you need to make sure that you do it, but you get something out of it. So in other words, you want to make sure that if you're doing something that you don't necessarily are excited about or like to do, you need to make sure that there's a great outcome to it. So as far as the pros and cons of being a freight broker business owner, it's very natural. At the end of the day, you're gonna do what you have to do to establish your business. You're gonna do whatever you have to do to grow your business, and you just have to make sure that it's well worth it. Like I said, you need to know what you're investing into. You need to know what you're doing, and you need to understand that you need a outcome at the end of the day for this to be able to work for you. So that's a little bit of the pros and cons for the business. Like I said, everything can be perfect. That'd be basically almost impossible for a business method to not have pros and cons, etc. Now, the next thing I want to go ahead and speak about to you is the investment and the money, right? So we want to start to speak about what exactly do I have to invest as a business owner to open up a freight brokerage company? What type of investment? What type of money do I need? Do I need to have backup money? Do I need to find investors, etc. Now, as far as an investment into the business of freight brokerage, as I was explaining, you obviously need to open up your business. So you have to register your business in your state. You obviously have to get an authority, which is your MC number and your US DOT number as well, to the Department of Transportation. You also have to get the surety bond. As I said, there's different prices. That really just comes down to you as an individual and which company you want to go ahead and take the surety bond from. You obviously want to go ahead and be complied with any type of law, permits, permissions that you need as a business owner to be able to run your business of a freight brokerage company. So yes, there is an investment. There is money that needs to be put into it. Now, as far as the investment to it, it really isn't necessarily something that will break your bank. Now, and what I mean by not breaking your bank is you're not investing to opening up for an example, a restaurant, where you have to spend $60,000 to $70,000 to open up a restaurant and hope to make your money back. Now, you're investing into the transportation industry. As I explained, it is $1 billion industry. So if you have the right business plan, if you have the right business method, and you have something patterned, you have a goal that you want to reach, or you have a certain step that you're going to take in this business, you need to understand that your money that you're investing into this business, you will get back, and you will overcome the structure of the investment and getting your money back and overcoming what you invested into this business. Now, as far as the money that you have to invest, surety bonds can run you anywhere from, let's say, I'll give you an example, from $500 to $5,000, depending on who you take it on, which company you use to provide you that service. That's some research that you would have to do on your own individual self. As far as a surety bond, it really comes down to different methods of individuals. It could be credit, it could be different type of ways of getting this surety bond. A surety bond is basically, like I said, a type of line of insurance almost for your business, and you have to pay it. It's a one-time thing, so you pay it for the year. So it's not like, let's say, I'll give you an example. If your surety bond is $600, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to pay $600 a month. You have to pay $600 for the year. So it's, like I said, it's not something that's gonna break the bank. It's not like you have to, pull out thousands and thousands of dollars month in, month out, every single month to be able to run what is called a freight brokerage business. No, that's not that really isn't the key of it. So this is why I'm explaining, as far as an investment in the money that's into the transportation industry and that's into what is a freight brokerage business. You don't have to break your bank. You don't have to basically invest too much. For the most part, we as individuals have everything that we need as far as being able to work as a freight brokerage business owner. So you need computers, you need internet. This is something that can be completely ran from the comfort of your home as well. I want to go ahead and get into that situation of the investment. So you need to understand that you don't need to go get into a mortgage of an office or rent of an office to basically run this business. You could run this business from the comfort of your home. You need a computer, you need reliable internet, you need a cell phone line, a landline, etc., a printer, a fax, a scanner, and a load board for you to be able to add your freight onto the load board so these carriers and dispatchers can contact you to book this freight with you. Now, as what I'm getting to, all those things that I mentioned, you individuals already have 80% of it. Probably the only things you don't have are maybe a load board, right? Because obviously you don't need a load board if you're not into the transportation business, and maybe a printer or a fax. Some people don't have printers or fax or computers, but it's something that you can invest into, because as what I'm trying to get to here is, it's an investment. What is an investment? An investment is something that you're investing into, something that you're generally gonna get back as the time goes by. So you need to understand there's a big difference between investing and spending. Spending is basically spending money out of pocket and paying money and not seeing the outcome and getting that back. Investing is when you invest money and you find a way to receive that money back as the time goes. So this is a investment. This is a way of getting your money back. And this business here in the transportation industry of what freight brokerage is, it's a very well-off business. It's it's something that can generate a lot of income. It's something that you can invest into and know that you're not going to break the bank, and that you know that you're not going to spend $25,000 to $30,000 to have a startup business. This is something that basically anyone with the right mindset and someone who wants to learn the business of freight brokerage can do. Like I said, the business owner of the CEO of Total Quality Logistics was an individual who started this 21 years ago, and 21 years later, they're pretty much basically ranked second in North America of being one of the best freight brokerage companies out there. And like I said, 21 years, when you think about it, it might sound like a lot. But as I explained to you guys, there's a lot of individuals who give 20 to 40 years just to a job site, just to a job, not even having a business, having nothing to do with what they're doing. That has nothing to do with them. That's not theirs. So if you think about 20 years of becoming a business owner and becoming a billion-dollar industry, it makes a lot of sense. And it kind of just shows to you guys as individuals who are looking to take that step into becoming a freight brokerage business owner, that you can get a lot out of something that you're not investing too much into. So in other words, you're investing into a business method that is proven to work. If you have a right business plan and if you have a right business method and schedule to what freight brokerage is. As I said, you want to get knowledgeable in the transportation industry. You want to take a training. You want to be able to understand what freight brokerage is. You want to be able to understand what transportation is. And you have to understand that it isn't necessarily as hard as you think it is. You just need to give yourself an opportunity as an individual to become a business owner. You can run this from home. You can run this business completely virtual. If you would like to hire people, you can completely hire them virtually, so you don't have to pay out-of-pocket expenses for computers, for internet, for desks, for chairs, rent, For an office, you can hire individuals from the comfort of their own home. You can manage this from the comfort of your own home. So you have to understand that there's a lot of very positive things in the future of becoming a freight brokerage business owner in the transportation business. Now, just want to go ahead and give a little recap about what we spoke about here. So I explained to you basically what the introduction of a freight brokerage business owner is, what a freight broker is, what they do, why they're needed, who they are, and why it's so crucial, to have this service in the transportation business. I also explained to you the income potential. There's basically income potential is there. This is a billion-dollar industry, and where there's a billion-dollar industry, there's obviously an income potential there for you to make money as an individual business owner. Because like I said, this is something that's well established. You're going to get whatever you want out of this business method for the amount of effort that you put into it. So if you have a right business plan, a right business method, and you follow it through, and it's very well patterned, and you know what you're doing, and you're knowledgeable in the transportation industry, you're going to go ahead and get what you invested into this business right back, plus more. There's a bright future as far as you future freight broker business owners. Next thing we spoke about was, I gave you an example of Total Quality Logistics, how 21 years ago there was an individual who decided to go ahead and start a freight brokerage business, and maybe just had the idea of just starting up a small business. 21 years later, they're ranked second in North America to, being one of the best freight brokerage companies in the industry. Maybe this individual did have the idea to do that. Maybe they didn't. But what I'm trying to get to here is, as I explained, there's individuals who spend 20 to 40 years in their whole lifetime working for something that necessarily isn't theirs. So why not work, 10 to 15 years, build up a business, and have something that's going to be yours for, for your generation, for your next generation, for your kids' generation, for your kids' kids' generation, because transportation is going to be around for a very long time. Like I said, take it out of our world for 1 month, and we would basically be in a very bad situation, because we need transportation. Our world kind of revolves on what transportation is. The next thing I spoke about was the pros and cons. It's obviously pros and cons to every business method. As far as the pros and cons in the freight brokerage side and in the transportation industry, obviously there's always going to be that little bit of cons. The expenses, the investments, basically, learning the business, hitting what are called those learning curves, being able to understand that, everything has pros and cons, but it's okay to run into cons as long as there's a pro after the con. Now, if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. It's very important to understand that if you hit something that you maybe didn't want to hit, you have to find something good out of that to make it a positive thing for you in the near future. So you need to understand there's always going to be pros and cons. There's always going to be things you dislike. There's always going to be things that you don't like. But you need to understand if there's something that you don't necessarily like to do in this business method, make sure that it has a positive outcome for you if you did it. So always drive, for the pro at the end of the day. Go through the con, get to the pro. It's the way to go. Every business has it. Every business has pros and cons. That's just the way business works. Now, the last thing we spoke about was the investment in the money, right? Is this something that's going to generally take you $30,000 to $50,000 to start up? No, it won't. As a startup business, you could basically start this business from the comfort of your home. As I explained, you can make it something virtual. You can employ individual freight broker agents virtually. There's a lot of potential good things to come into the near future of becoming a freight broker business owner. As far as the investment, it's not something that's going to break your bank. For the most part, as I explained, 80 to 90% of the things that I've explained to you guys that you need to become a freight broker, we necessarily have. And if we don't have, it's something that you can go to a store and basically pick up. And, it's not going to cost you $20,000 to go and pick up a computer, a laptop, or a cell phone, and an internet connection, for example. It's basically something that's not going to necessarily kill what is your your pocket. So there's a lot of good things in the freight brokerage company. You need to understand that you have to invest into yourself to become a business owner. You have to invest into your business to make it succeed. Money makes money, so it's very important that we all understand the freight brokerage business side, the investment side, the money side, the negotiation sides. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this introduction video that I came up with here to explain to you guys what freight brokerage is, what the freight brokerage business is, and why freight brokerage business is needed in the transportation industry. I want to go ahead and thank you one more time, and thank you for staying tuned to this video. Thank you.